Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel. Today, talking about the time that Edgar Allan Poe predicted the future. Yesterday I was thinking about Edgar Allan Poe, which is a normal human behavior to do. And specifically I was thinking about the Mike Flanagan Fall of the House of Usher show from this past October, which was fantastic. I loved that show. I thought it was a really creative way to adapt all of the Edgar Allan Poe stories and kind of put them all into one modern package. It was a lot of fun. And I was thinking about this line that made me laugh uh, by Mark Hamill's character. He played Arthur Pym. And in this version of the story, Arthur Pym was the lawyer for the Usher family. And at one point, I forget which episode it's in, and I forget what the context was, but he mentions to his assistant that he's having Richard Parker for dinner. And if you're not super familiar with all of Edgar Allan Poe's works, that line might just feel like a little throwaway because it's a valid way of saying that, like, I'm having someone over for dinner. But that's not really what he means if you know Edgar Allan Poe's uh, bibliography, because in the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym, the main character, uh, the title character, is shipwrecked at one point. And there's a bunch of survivors who I don't even think they're on a lifeboat. I think they strap themselves to the hull that's just floating in the sea. And they are floating there for days. They're starving. And they decide to follow the custom of the sea, which is in the face of starving to death in the open water. You draw lots, and then whoever draws the short straw is sacrificed for meat, and they resort to cannibalism. Apparently, this was this was an accepted thing. That's why it's called the custom of the sea. They put a nice little name on it. Um, and in the story, the unfortunate person who loses the lot drawing is a young cabin boy named Richard Parker. So he's having Richard Parker for dinner. Very funny. And then I remembered this story that it's not new. This might not be new to you at all because it's been around the internet for a while, and it is true. But it's reminded me of the story that I had heard. This actually ended up coming true to like a very specific detail. So the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym was written in 1838. About a half century later, in 1884, a yacht called the Mignonette was shipwrecked. And there were a group of survivors who were starving, and so they decided to follow the custom of the sea. And I don't know if they drew lots in this situation. I read a couple different accountings where I think maybe he was just sick and they just decided that like he'd be the weakest, so they just took him and they killed him for meat. But they decided that one of them would be sacrificed for meat, and that person was a young cabin boy named Richard Parker. So Edgar Allan Poe got it right down to the detail of the name. And this, like I said, I don't know if this is brand new to anybody. Edgar Allan Poe's Richard Parker is, something that is well known in literary circles. If you ever read Life of Pi or saw the movie by Jan Martel, in that's a story of a guy who is shipwrecked with a tiger in the lifeboat with him, and he names the tiger Richard Parker, and that has importance for like how that story ends, which is an interesting Easter egg in and itself. But yeah, there was an actual Richard Parker who, about 50 years after Edgar Allan Poe wrote the story of a shipwreck, got shipwrecked and then was eaten by his crewmates. So pretty wild stuff. And in fact, the real story, like the way you could tell that this is actually real, not just an internet myth that's been propagated, is that there was an important court case that came out of this situation. It's R versus Dudley and Stevens. And this was the court case that ended the custom of the sea. This set a precedent that necessity was not a defense against a murder charge. And that's how custom of the sea, that's how we finally got sailors to stop eating each other. Way to go, Edgar Allan Poe. Yeah, I hope you found that interesting. I hope you hadn't heard that before. I hope you learned something new today. Let me know if there's any other instances of like serendipity like that, of an author who gets something really, really spot on right in their writing. Many years later. So that's it. I hope you learned something today. I hope you had a good time. Thank you very much for spending some time with me today. But now it's time to get back to eating Richard Parker.